Everybody, welcome to TED Talk again, season 2, episode 4. It's already been an amazing season 2. We had a ball yesterday with VJ and Elias, and I rewatched that this morning. God, we could have been on there for 4 hours. Amazing. Today we've got 2 guests. We're going to little throwback to the 1960s, but I think this
throwback.
Throwback. But it's going to be a blast, all the way, coming to us from all the way Blundell Sands. I'm sure
Liverpool.
No one in America knows where Blundell Sands is, but it's Liverpool. Yeah. Star of The Searchers of the 1960s. Welcome to the show, John McNally. Hi, John.
Not too bad. Are you good? Hey.
How are you?
Well, I'm just a bit bored with this lockdown situation.
It is rough. You know, I don't know if you know, but all my in-laws, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law live in Aintree. My wife's a Scouser. My son was born in... and I'm a Man United fan, so you can imagine...
I'm not talking to you then.
Welcome to the show. And also on the show, a legend in the music industry, a friend of mine for many years, I think 12 years now, maybe even longer. Mr. Rock and Roll is his name, from K-Earth. Welcome to the show, Brian Beirne. Brian.
Well, Jerry, thank you.
How are you? How are you?
Excellent.
Good.
Yes, we're all confined here, so...
Yeah, it's a little crazy. Brian is coming to you from Los Angeles, or that Los Angeles general area. And John's over there in Liverpool. I'm in Phoenix. And so the only thing we don't have in common is the weather. Sorry, John.
No, the weather's good here.
Is it? What is it?
It's sunny, lovely sunny night. A bit nippy wind-wise, but it's been sunny all day.
Love it.
It's helped by my red gob.
That's great. Well, it's going to be a great episode of TED Talk. Don't forget, if you're watching this and you have any questions, let's fire them away. These guys have lots of stories. It's going to be brilliant. The first thing we're going to do is going to ask a couple of random questions. I'm going to start with John, and I love this. John, who in your career in The Searchers, you've been on stage with many, many people, but who is your most favorite person you've been on stage with and performed with?
I would think Fats Domino.
Ooh, wow, that's a biggie.
Yeah, it was one of my favourites, and when we did the Star Club, we played with all the greats, and Ray Charles, Fats Domino. But Fats was great. He was on stage, and he was superb, and off stage he was such a nice bloke, you know, no airs and graces, and he was great. I enjoyed his company very much.
Now, just to clarify something for anyone who's watching, you did just happen to throw in there that it was at the Star Club in Hamburg, right?
Yeah.
It's a pretty significant venue.
It is the one with the 60s music. I think 2 significant things was the Star Club and Brian Epstein.
Right.
Because we all got our sort of learning from the Star Club, and only for Brian knocking everyone's door and broke the Beatles, he opened all up for us. Superb.
That's great. Brian, you've had a wide and varied career going way back to, 1857?
Yes, a long time. We were carrying the guitars in the covered wagon, so...
Big voice.
Not necessarily on stage, but whether it's an interview person or someone you shared transport with, who would you say would be the most favorite person that you've shared time with in your career?
You know, I probably booked 250, 300 national artists over the years, maybe more. Probably my favorite person would be Fats Domino. I'll tell you why. We go back to May 1957. This is Salem, Oregon. And Fats comes to town.
Weird.
And I said to my mother, Mom, I've got to meet Fats Domino. She said, you can't. It's an all-adult club. And I said, but Mom, it's rock and roll. I've got to meet Fats Domino. And I said, Mom, you used to own this building where the club was. And you could call the new owner and I can meet Fats. She said, I said, but Mom, it's rock and roll. Mother, God rest her soul, she takes me down, and I'm arranged to meet Fats. and he's coming off of a break. I'm 10 years old. And he says, do you play piano? I said, yeah. He said, you know my songs? I said, certainly. He said, well, you stay right here. So after the break, he brings me on stage. Now, this is, a different period of time. And you see a 10-year-old little white kid on stage with a person of color in an all-white town full of churches. And the police are called. I played 2 songs with Fats Domino. I don't think my knees stopped shaking for a month after that. It was one of the great thrills of my life. And the police are called. My mother and I are thrown out. She's almost arrested. We fast forward 10 years. Fats is in Reno. He had not done a West Coast show in all those years. And I went backstage. I said, you remember coming back through here 10 years ago and there was a little boy that came on stage, played piano with you? He said, yeah. I said, I'm that little boy all grown up. He said, oh, little Bryant. He always called me Bryant. But got the great pleasure of working with Fats and booking him through the years. And just a dear, sweet soul. Loved him.
Wow, 2 amazing answers.
I can't believe it. I remember doing a jam session at the Star Club with Jerry Lee.
Yeah.
We were rehearsing one afternoon, and you won't believe the song we were rehearsing, The 12th and Never, Johnny Mathis. I don't know why, but we rehearsed and that, and he walks in the door, and suddenly he's on the piano, and it's away we go. Great afternoon.
Brilliant! Wow, these stories. This is what the show is going to be like.
Rock and roll's all about.
It's amazing. All right, here's the next question. I'm going to start with Brian. Brian, aside from your career, what would you say is the best concert that you've ever seen yourself?
Boy, outside of my Legends of Rock and Roll, which I put together at the Great Theater, we did over 120 different acts in 12 years that I did the Legend show. We brought back a lot of people who had been together in decades, all original bands. We restarted the career of Ed Townsend, For Your Love, and so many artists. That was a great thrill for me to do. Other 2 great shows probably would be seeing Elvis in '57. The night that Cindy and I saw Sinatra 22 times. I always used to like to take her on her birthday because Frank was always in Vegas on her birthday. So we went in and we'd see Frank for a couple of days in a row. And this one particular night, we saw him on a Friday night. It was her birthday. He came over and shook her hand. And the next night, my agent came in and my TV producer, because I was doing television also at the same time. And my best friend, we got a table again down front with her arm on stage. And Frank was absolutely magnificent this night. And you never knew with Frank, because you never knew whether or not Jack Daniels was going to hit him just right, or Barbara was home, or he was with his pals, or how his mood was. And this night, boy, old Blue Eyes was really sparkling. So he finishes the show. Curtain, people start to leave. And of course, we're going to be last because we're at the front table. Frank walks back out and he says, hey, where are you people going? Sit down. Somebody get me a drink. He looks down at me and he says, what do you want to hear? We fed him songs for the next 20 minutes. It was the only time that Frank had ever done an encore. I ran into Tom Dreesen, his coming up the next day. He said, you see the show? I said, yeah. He says, Frank's never done an encore. I said, why did he do it? He said, his last night at this casino, Jack Daniels hit him right. He thought it was 1962, and he was having the ball, didn't want to quit. So, magic night.
That's amazing stories. What about you, John?
Well, in '74, we played the Palladium with the Everleys.
Okay.
2 shows, 2 nights. And although they weren't getting on, they were at each other's throats. They were great. And I watched them 2 shows, and I thought they were absolutely unbelievable. Their harmonies were out of the world. And it's a pity they weren't so untouchable, if you know what I mean. You couldn't get them to say hello. I've got their autographs here anyway, but it's nice. They were a great harmony, because we brought up on the Everleys, us and the Beatles, and I loved it. It was a great night. Wow. Still brings tingles to me. It was great.
Fantastic. For anybody watching, can you imagine that? Elvis Presley, Frank Sinatra, the Everly Brothers. Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And in the final question in both your careers, and we're going to start with you, John, here, with John all the way with the Searchers in that incredible 60s era, is there one particular moment, just a single moment, which is your most memorable throughout your career?
There was many. We've done all the variety shows, but a point which I always think turned our career. We have the Star Club in 1963, and we just recorded "Sweets for My Sweet" on the way to the Star Club at Pike Studios, Marble Arch, and it was released in July or June. And we've been in the Star Club, and next minute, Pie, the record company, rang up, sent us a telegram saying, "You've got to come home and plug this record." And we said, "Oh no," anyway, we had to buy ourselves out of the contract, and we came home to promote the record. But it wasn't selling, it was known as a sleeper, what a sleeper is. It was just hovering in the charts. And we thought, we missed a boat. Jerry's made it, Beatles have made it. And then somebody said to Lennon, "John, what's your favourite record at the moment?" And he just said, "Well, The Searchers." And once he said that, it was in the papers, it was number one in 2 weeks.
That's not a bad person for John Lennon to say, "Hey, that's my favourite song."
It's amazing. And we went, "Hey, what?"
Brian, what about you? One moment, one single moment.
Well, I guess probably in 1991 when I was awarded a star of the Hollywood Walk of Fame. It was just a magic day. My star is living up for Alice, and it's a culmination of a great career, and just a very blessed moment. I remember I wanted to be an actor when I was a kid, and I remember walking the Hollywood Walk of Fame in the early 60s, and my dad said, "Maybe you'll be here someday." I didn't think it would be for doing radio at that point in time, but Dad didn't live to see it. But it was a great day.
That was great. We're
Hang on, can Brian tell me the Buddy Holly story?
We're definitely going to do the Buddy Holly story. That's for sure. But we're struggling a little bit with Brian's audio. It was a little crackling here and there. We're trying to. I forgot while doing the research for the show that you had the star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Now, am I right? It's just down from Hollywood and Vine. Is that right?
Hollywood and Highland. It's right on the corner.
Hollywood and Highland. I remember seeing it, and if I remember rightly, because I did go and have my photograph out there and sent it to you, say, "Hey, Brian, here you are." Isn't it just down from Elvis or somebody like that? It's like 2 or 3 down from you. Is someone like pretty significant in the rock and roll world? Am I right?
Yes. Yeah, Elvis.
Superb. Great stuff. Three great answers to stories there. So here we are with John McNally and Brian Beirne, both from the 1960s. I was born in 1959, so just missed it. I was only... But my dad was a musician, of course. He tells me, my dad always used to tell me stories of the old days and how things were always better in 2 areas. One, football. He always used to tell me that, yeah, Man United are okay now, but the 1948 and the 1958 team, those were the best. No. And then he talks about the football, the musicians. And he says that he always used to tell me that there's nothing to compare with what happened in that early 60s and time period. So I'm going to turn to you, John. You were very young, but what was it like back then? I'm talking about like 61, 60, 62, and it just started going.
Well, 61 was sort of the Star Club era, when all bands were leaving the Star Club with the Beatles, joining the Pacemakers, the Undertakers. You remember the Undertakers?
No.
Well, they were one of the big 3, King Size Taylor, all these Liverpool bands were at the Star Club. And it was a great camaraderie playing with them all. But when we did the Liverpool, there were so many venues.
Yeah.
That you could be doing 3 or 4 a night. So you'd be humping your gear down the cavern while the Beatles are humping their gear out. So it's they're amazing scenes, but it was just fun. We was all so young that we enjoyed it so much, and we didn't have a roadie in those days.
Wow.
So it was like you hump the gear in, hump the gear out. So that's a good picture, by the way, with Tony in front. Sad. But it was a great camaraderie amongst all the bands. There was no sort of jealousy. You just wanted to play and do your best on stage.
I'm looking at these pictures, John. You're a good-looking young man here, aren't you?
I was only a child. I think too much makeup there, don't you think?
This is great. I mean, we always talk about, people all over the world talk about the start. The Beatles is obviously.
Oh, yes.
And I remember seeing an interview you did a while ago, and it was eloquent the way you talked about it coming from you. You talked about first seeing them. I think it was at St. James or some hall.
St. John or Latham Hall, all in Bootle.
In Bootle, was it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's where my wife's from. In fact,
just coming home from work, both the Echo on the bus. And I had to see where we were that night, and they were on with the Silver Beatles.
Right, yeah.
The bloody hell's the Silver Beatles. So when I went backstage, and there was Lennon having fisticuffs with some bloke. So it was like unreal. And when they went on stage, they were smoking, which we were in our little uniforms, and they were in the black leather jackets, the Beatles cowboy boots. And I thought, what's happening here, And the audience, while they were dancing, just stopped and walked towards the stage. And I was aghast. It was unbelievable. They were fantastic. That was when Stuart Sutcliffe played bass, and I was back to the audience all the time. Absolutely unbelievable. And I thought, the rock and roll, the best rock and roll band ever.
Wow. Yeah. So I remember you saying about them. There was a part of the show, I think you said, where at that time bands just went on stage and played the 2-minute song. But here you've got bands throwing in 4 or 5 solos in the middle of it.
Right, yeah. We were aghast. We going, what's happening here? We had a singer at the time, Johnny Sandon, who was a country and western singer, basically. And we were going on doing like Big Bad John and Tennessee Stud. Something's wrong here. So, and we were doing shadow stuff as well. And then the Beatles came on and whack. And of course, Pete Best had that 4 bass drum all the time. Boom, 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 boom. And the volume was out of this world. And they were great blokes. Really just 4 lads, 5 lads. And it was just good lads together.
That's great. Great stories. And of course, then the Searchers, Sweets for My Sweet, Needles and Pins, Love Potion, and so on. We've got a little clip of a video for our viewers to see the Searchers in action. Check this out. Great stuff. Great stuff.
That Love Potion made number 2 in the States.
Yeah. We were looking at some of the videos, and we saw that was the most watched video over here. I What year was Needles and Pins out, John?
64. Say, sweet 63, 64.
So I told you I was born in 59, February. So that would make me about 5, which is really young. But, through your life, I don't know if a lot of people say this, there's certain songs that remind you of a period, an era,
Yeah.
Like for me, when I was a teenager in the 70s, it was Slade and Wizard and Gilbert O'Sullivan and all that. And it just takes me back to that. Needles and Pins is one of those songs that I think about it and I'm going right back to my childhood. And I was only 5. So for me, that's a bit weird because I was very young. But I remember I saw her today and I can feel the vibe of the era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your mum must have had a tranny in your pram.
She cost me something different these days, but yeah, she did. Rolling around with a wireless in there, playing around.
Well, you still all the mums with the portable radio in the pram.
That's right. So after the 60s have gone, John, what happened then for the Searchers? Because I know obviously as the revivals start coming around, 70s, 80s, 90s even, what were you doing in those times?
70s was an awful period. The early 70s was the chicken in the basket period. The big social clubs.
Yeah.
The Bailey Circuit, Stockton Fiesta, Sheffield Fiesta, and the Pocos, of course, and Pickwicks and all those places, which were just chicken in the basket. That couldn't care what you were playing. And we didn't like it, but it was a way to pay the mortgage, you might say. So then we did a tour with all the English 60s bands in the States.
Okay.
Peter Noon, Mindbenders, ourselves, Billy J, Jerry, a few others. And on the way home on the plane, I said to Jerry, this would work in the UK, And he said, oh, will it? I said, this will definitely work. With all these artists on now, they're nearly all original. So why don't we get an agent? So in the end, we got touch with an agent and he took it on, Flying Music, and they did the first one. And since then, it's lasted even now.
Is it?
So, oh, yeah. There's one going out in the autumn, but I doubt if it'll go out now because of the pandemic. So,
well, Brian and I know full well how the memorabilia, the memory, the over 55 market respond to that music. We're still young.
Our final tour a year ago was sold out, and it was unbelievable. We were retiring, and the theatres were sold out.
Absolutely.
We couldn't believe it. We were having to change our mind, but Frank had cancer at the time, so we had to pack it in. I just had a stroke, so we thought, this is getting too close. We're getting too old. Leave it to the young ones.
So on the young ones, what do you think of today's music? Is there anything in today that you like out there?
I like all the bands. I'm always interested in the bands. I'm not too fussy on the girl bands, the girl singers. They don't sing the tunes. It's part of technic vocals. Yeah. And it's like it's all right. But there's some good good bands out.
Yeah, there's a lot of great music over there. We had one of the people we had on TAD Talk was Richie Canada, who was Billy Joel's sax player, and we were talking about a band called Jellyfish. I don't know if you know them, Brian. They're out of LA, or they're not together anymore, but what a band, amazing stuff. So yeah, cool stuff. There's someone on here, actually someone from TAD, Jan, who said she's trying to figure out, John, if you're saying work or wake.
I'll say work.
Really?
I'm from Liverpool, mush.
Oh, brilliant. And just one last thing before we chat with Brian. I'm looking behind you, and I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, is that 5 gold records there?
Oh, there's loads there.
Oh, look at this all around. That's fantastic.
I've got, that clock there.
Yeah.
That belongs to Chris Curtis.
Is that right?
Yeah, he was a lovely bloke. He was one of the first to die, and he got in with the wrong crowd in London, and it was sad. 66 that was. We just finished the Australasia tour with Stones, and Chris was gone by then, drugged out of his head, and he's sending poems around the aeroplane on the way home, and then he said, "Well, I'm packing in when I get home." So, and then a few years later, he was dead.
Wow, it was sad.
It was a shame, because what a talent! Absolutely, we lost something special with Chris.
Gosh. All right, Brian, how are you?
I wanted to mention to John, I certainly, as a disc jockey all those years, 40 plus years, played all your records over and over. So, and as for the chicken in the basket, that sounds like a really good idea for takeouts, isn't it? So,
people used to call it soup in the basket.
So John was referring to a time, we call it the social clubs or the working men clubs in England. Yeah. There was a period there from, I think, maybe the late 60s up until the early 80s, where these social clubs, Brian, were big, and we had big names. The Garter, where I was playing, we had people like Gladys Knight, Dionne Warwick, the Stylistics, the Shy Lights. In the 70s, Tom Jones, that's what they were like. And I remember the story I like telling is Gladys Knight coming in and doing 6 nights at this place. It's not one night, 6 nights, 6-night run there. So, those chicken in the basket places, there were some amazing little places. Boy, we could have a whole show on Clubland.
Yeah, well, you could do. And some of the comedians that we met were like unbelievable, funny. It was all clean stuff, but it was great.
No, we just last night, I'm not going to get too sidetracked here, but last night we were watching TV with my wife and my son, his fiance, and it started going down the wormhole of British comedians, and we started with Peter Kay, and then I went back to Frank Carson and George Roper, and then we went to Tommy Cooper, who I think is one of the best ever, and it was amazing stuff. But Brian, where do we start with you? I remember the first time I met you, not spoke to you, but when we brought the tokens to Sky all those years ago, we sat down, I think, had a drink, and I remember I learned about you on K-Earth, and I think I asked you a random question like, so who have you met? And then about 9 hours later...
I was so fortunate to, so many of the people whose records I bought as a kid in the 50s and early 60s that I wound up being good friends with, and later on in the second part of my career, booking these people. Ricky Nelson became a dear friend. That's, of course, the Righteous Brothers, Elton John, Pat Boone. The list goes on and on through the years. Little Richard, of course, was a dear friend, and so sad to see him pass the other day. And Richard and I did a lot of shows together over the years. Probably one of my favorites.
Bobby.
A client had seen my Legends of Rock and Roll show at the Great Theater, where I had 12 to 15 acts on the show. He said, I'm having my wedding, and I'd like you to do sort of a mini legend show for me. I said, well, what do you want? He said, well, I would like the original Penguins, Earth Angel, Phil Phillips with Sea of Love, and Jack Scott. And I said, great, I can find them. I said, but I'm not sure about Phil Phillips. Nobody's seen Phil since 1959, but we did find him, and he was absolutely perfect doing the Sea of Love. Then he calls me and he said, I'd like to have either Chuck Berry, Jerry Lee Lewis, or Little Richard. I said, well, you're in for a cost. He said, it doesn't matter. I said, well, I'm also in for some trouble with a couple of these. He said, no. I said, well, listen, I know them all. I'll make the call. Chuck said he'd do it. Then he declined. Jerry Lee was in England, wanted a private plane. Long story short, Richard agreed to do it. I said, all you have to do is 4 songs. He said, okay. So he gets there, and I had his original drummer, Charles Connor, and a great band that I used for all my shows. So 4 songs later, I go to take Richard off. Richard waves me off. He did an hour and 20 minutes. He didn't want to leave the stage. It was the first time he'd been with a live audience, and he had just released this Itsy Bitsy Spider and the kids and stuff, and he was having so much fun. So it was quite a wedding.
Wow. I bet, is there any footage of that anywhere? Is there any video footage of that floating around?
No, I wish there was, because it was a magic night with all those people.
I bet. Hey, just 1 second. I want to just move back to John for a second, because we were talking off camera. I'm going back to the chicken in the basket thing. There was a club in the northwest of England called the Talk of the North. It was absolutely brilliant in its heyday. And we talk about these 2 or 3 degrees of separation on here. So I was in a band called Strawberry Pie, and our manager at the time was Roy Mosley. Roy Mosley was the owner of Talk of the North, and Roy booked the Searchers, and Roy is watching the show right now because I just saw him come in. So, Roy, if I don't still owe you commission, it's great to see you on the show.
Yeah, I'll send him an invoice. That other place was the venue was in Farnworth.
Oh, Farnworth, what was it? It was
Go on. Got you.
Oh, you have. I can't remember what it was called now. I'm going to remember though.
Maybe Roy would know.
Roy, if you're watching and you're not drinking, just type us in what that venue was in Farnworth. But it's good to see you on here, Roy. Sorry,
Blighties.
What was that?
Blighties.
That's what I said before. Is it Blighties?
Yeah, you're right then.
It was.
I'm not
sure if it was Blighties or not, but yeah. So Brian, I know that one of the when we talk about, Brian is a booking agent, a talent agent like myself, and we work together and have enjoyed that relationship for many years, and we still do. He manages a fantastic band called Surfin', who is definitely one of the best ones out there, amongst other great bands. But one of my favorite things you ever told me, and I don't know how many stories you have, and I wish we had all day to tell them, was about Buddy Holly. And I don't know if it's the story, but I don't know if you know which one I'm talking about. But
Can I ask, Brian?
Yes.
Is it true, Buddy Holly, when you interviewed him, he would give you a little Stratocaster badge?
Well, I don't know the answer to that.
Because there's a journalist who lives in Nottingham, and she was given by Buddy Holly after an interview a little Stratocaster badge, and it must be a great momentum. I wonder how many you gave out.
Wow,
must have been great.
Well, Brian, tell us your about Buddy.
So this 1958, and my mother and I are living in Salem, Oregon. She owned the Speedway, racing stock cars and midgets and so forth. Now, in those days, in the 50s and early 60s, as John will remember, especially if you came over to the States, there weren't any sheds, any Staples centers, or any big places to play. So you played a VFW hall or an armory or a roller rink or maybe a high school auditorium. So when the artists came through, and we didn't get a whole lot here on the West Coast in that period of time. And so this was, the 58 recession, and we lived by, if we had rain on the Speedway, we didn't eat. The neighbors were feeding us. So I'm looking at this as, and I'm 12 years old, but I'm thinking of the numbers here. And I said, Mom, we have the biggest facility in town, 1,000 seats here. Why don't we have a rock and roll show? We've got the audio equipment, the speakers, and so forth. And we'll bring in some rock and roll acts. And she said, well, all right. She said, what do you want? I said, Buddy Holly. So she called Buddy's agent, and he said, we'd love to do the West Coast Swing in April of 59. And we'll start, at your Speedway and go up the coast to Seattle and Portland and so forth. So lo and behold, of course, Buddy left us in February, and that was the end of that show. My mother got cold feet after that as far as booking anything. She was superstitious, but it was a great idea.
No, February the 3rd.
Yeah. No, you've. I know in your career, Brian, on K Earth, just an electric time. As musicians, we don't. I certainly never really knew anything about the DJ world, and of course, Bob Conrad, who I work with, who was really on the other side of things. He was the guy. He was the guy in between you and the artist saying, "I need this record playing." But what period of time would you say, as being the main man there on K Earth, was the most exciting time in retrospect, looking back?
Well, I did 29 years there, and probably, I think for me, the late 80s, early 90s, when I was doing the Legends shows for the first time. The first show was 88, and it was before. Yeah, probably the mid to late 80s here, before we got into the dreaded word in this industry, and that was research, which I think was also a killer for performance. Companies would say, well, we need to research jailhouse rock. Well, how much do you need to do a focus group to research a song like jailhouse rock? And they said, well, if it doesn't test 92.5, we can't play it. I said, well, what's the difference between 92.4 and 92.5? Well, no, we just can't play it. So we did a lot of the focus groups and so forth, and then they'd come back and say, well, here's the top 10. And then the program director would say, well, I don't want to play them. I said, but that's what was tested. Just a lot of stuff that went on that became a whole different animal by the time we got into the 90s and the deregulation and so forth. Just a lot of factors that took the excitement out of radio. I loved every day that I was on the air. And before that, of course, through the years, and probably the pivotal moment for me, because I've been a news director, a newscaster, TV weatherman. And when I went to K Earth, I said, I'd been programming stations at that point for KO. I said, I want to go back on the air and just tell the history of rock and roll and have the artists on and do my thing. If it works, just leave me alone. If it doesn't work, I'll go back into management. And luckily it worked for 29 years. But I got to program my own show, do my own thing, and there was a lot of creativity. By the time you got into the 90s, they took a lot of the creativity away from the jock and gave you a playlist to play. And by the time I retired in 2005, I was a number on a sheet. So,
well, it's certainly in your industry, you're one of the legends, and I don't use that term lightly. So it's definitely my honor to know you as a friend and to be able to talk about it. And your name comes up, as you know, we have a place in Cabo, we have a bar in our back garden there. I sit down and invariably we talk about music and Brian Beirne comes up and I fire into the many Buddy Holly stories. So it's cool.
We had time for a few more.
Yeah, it would be great. We're going to move to the part of the show that I call Where in the World is Terry?
Where in the world is Terry?
Where in the world is Terry?
And before we go into, I've noticed that Roy Mosley hasn't said, Roy, if you're still there, come on, let us know, say hi, something.
Probably piddled.
Yeah, but we've got quite a few people saying, hey, we need these two back for a part 2. We always try and keep the show under an hour, and I've got a feeling this could potentially go on longer if we didn't pull it back. But anyway, the way in the world works, I change my virtual background. I'll do something and I'll go, okay, there I am. We did this yesterday. That's Stockholm, Sweden.
Yeah.
You recognize that place, John?
Yeah, no, I don't recognise that at all. The Three Graces.
That's Liverpool. The white building gives it puts people off.
Other buildings.
But the Liver Buildings is the one that everybody.
And the Three Graces, of course.
Yeah, I put that on there because that's Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, which is where Anne and I live.
Oh, everyone goes there. Oh, yeah, we go there every week.
That's where I want to be right now, but I'm not. But today's a little different because I'm going to put myself in the middle of a 1970s movie.
Manchester.
Well, I mean, John, if you want, I can really say to you, where am I right now?
Oh, God. Everton.
By the way, are you red or blue, by the way?
Strangely enough, I like the two of them to win because in the 60s, I went with my dad and my uncle Johnny to see Everton at Gather Street, and I went to see Liverpool in the Cop with my older brother. So I was torn in between, but I lean more to Liverpool because they're winning more.
Exactly. And of all the Scousers I've interviewed, no one has ever said both.
No, it's true. And my son-in-law is an Evertonian and blue nose, and he's fanatic, and he's got the kids all blue noses. And they say, oh, we don't want Liverpool to win. I said, don't you want two teams in your city to win? Oh, no, Everton. It's like United and City, isn't it?
Yeah. Football's a big deal. So I'm going to put myself in the middle of a 70s movie. Here's how it works. I'm going with you first, John. I'm going to put you in the movie. You look at the movie behind me. You got to tell us what it is. If you don't get it, Brian gets a chance to steal it from you, and so do the viewers. So here we go. This is pretty easy, to be honest, John.
Get me glasses.
So look at this movie. Famous movie, 1970s.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Bang! Look at that. That was quick.
I put my glasses on, that's why.
You know that one, Brian?
Absolutely. Filmed actually where I spent 10 years of my life, Salem, Oregon.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know that.
Yeah, the hospital there that they used.
Fantastic movie. Makes me want to go and watch it. All right, yours isn't so easy, I'm afraid, Brian. Yours is a bit more difficult, but here we go. Which movie am I in from the 1970s?
How do you rock it?
There'll be a lot of people screaming it out, Brian.
Doesn't compute.
No. Oh, look at that. That might give it away. See that? No? Any ideas, John?
How do you rock a show, is it? Rock a horror show.
Picture show. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Rocky Horror.
Yeah. Do we get any money for this? Is a check in the post? Oh, Roy Mosley's got it.
Yeah. That's great. That's cool. On our shows, we ask every guest one question. It's the same question every time. And I'm going to ask you two now. And it's this. If both of you could spend the next 60 minutes with two people, any two people, dead or alive, in any one place in the world, who would you like to spend the next hour with? Where would you go and what would you talk about? I'm going to start with you, Brian. Two people, one place.
I would probably take that hour with my lovely wife, Cindy, and my dad, who never got a chance to know her. And go to Fiji, where Cindy and I were married. And I always used to love to sail, get on a sailboat, and just spend the next hour letting him know her and how much I love her and how much fun we had over the last 35 years.
Absolutely. That's great. How is Cindy, by the way? How is she doing?
She's right here. She's waving.
Good. Hi, Cindy. Well, that's great. Fiji with your wife and your dad. I like that. What about you, John?
Well, besides the family, of course, you would know that. I would like to go to Nashville and meet Cliff Gallup and Scotty Moore.
Wow.
I'd chat to them.
Yeah.
And give me a few tips. I'm trying to learn rockabilly at the moment, so it was, that would be my, night out, and a burger and meeting them two were like. I went to see Scotty Moore in town just before he died. Really? It was great. Yeah. So I hope that people know who these people are.
Well, probably not many of the viewers, and I'll be honest, I don't know many. I don't know.
Well, Scotty Moore was Elvis's guitarist,
right?
Cliff Gallup was Gene Vincent's guitarist.
I didn't know who Cliff was. I knew Scotty. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Great.
Have you spent much time in the States?
Loads of time. Basically working. I mean, last time we went, we did a Universal Amphitheatre. We did a casino in Vegas not long back as well, just outside Vegas, and that was great. Great crowd. Enjoy it all the time. And the only trouble is the food's too much. There's too much of it. It's like,
well, you don't have to eat it all, Just because
what you do it. It's a joke. And especially the puddings, all nice ice cream and stuff.
And I don't know if many people know. I think most people do watch the show. I'm from England, from Manchester, and I've been in the States 20 plus years.
Oh God.
America, so I'm right down there in the middle, and I go back to England and just pig out at Greg's and the Chippies.
Oh, not Greg's. A steak slice.
I know. What about you, Brian? Have you spent much time in the UK?
No, I have not. Actually, I've never been there.
Oh, we got to fix that. I think we do a Rock and Roll Legends tour in the small theatres with you hosting it.
An idea.
Yeah, I love the idea. That'd be great. This has been a great show. What a great day. I'd like Linda said.
Can I interrupt? Do you see much of Billy J. Kramer?
Me or Brian?
You? Well, both of you.
No, I have never met him, never seen him. But you, Brian?
He lives in Long Island, and sometimes he gets in touch, and sometimes he doesn't.
Really? No. Have you, Brian? Do you know much about Billy J?
I think I probably did 3 shows with him many years ago, and nice chap.
Yeah, yes.
I think the last one we did was maybe in Arena years ago. So
yeah.
I just thought, someone besides me is still going.
No, it's great to reminisce about those times. Some of the great bands that came out of there. Of course, when we go back and we talk about back to the Beatles, and my son's a musician. He's 26 years of age, and aside from the fact that he was born in Liverpool, I'm very proud of being born in Liverpool. It's wonderful to see him feel so passionate about the Beatles and the music and the diversity. In fact, he was lucky enough last year, he's recording an album, and we got to spend a day in Abbey Road. He recorded the piano and the vocal parts in Studio 2. And the magic in that room, you can feel it when you walk in. You look at that grand piano, and Hey Jude was done there, and that upright, and Lady Madonna was played on that, and yeah, just fantastic times. Not sure there'll ever be times like that again. But
no, I don't think so.
And it's been wonderful, seriously, having both of you on the program. It's been great. I can tell from our viewers here that they're all saying, wow, what a great...
They're all turning off, are you?
What was that?
Oh, John.
They're all turning off.
You mentioned Jerry Lee Lewis before. I have a quick story for you. Jerry Lee and I were working on a bottle of Four Roses bourbon one night in Memphis. And I asked him, I said, who did you want to be? And he said, nobody's ever asked me that. I said, well, I'm asking you, who did you really want to be? He said, I wanted to be Al Jolson. I wanted to be a song and dance man. He said, what happened? He said, well, one night I went to this barn to see this young guy. Hank Williams. And he said, after that, he said, everything changed for me, the whole direction.
I was one of my first records was Hank Williams' record.
Was it really?
On a 78.
Wow.
My brother brought it back from the sea. Well, he used to go to New York on the ships out to Liverpool and used to bring all the American records home. And he bought Hank Williams. And that was great.
That's great.
Had my first guitar.
John, next time we're in Liverpool when this quarantine's over, we're gonna get in touch. We'll go and have a pint at the Blue Anchor or something. And
The Blue Anchor.
we'll go to the Blue Anchor
bar now and Ringo Street and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I think the Blue Anchor's still in. It's between Netherton and Aintree, so whatever that area.
A lot of them are knocked down, you know.
Well, I know that's there because I go there every time I go back with my brother-in-law and sister-in-law and all the nephews and nieces, and I always order meat potato pie, chips, peas, gravy, sticky toffee pudding, and that's just for my appetizer.
Sticky toffee pudding. Oh, God.
We'll do that in Liverpool. Brian, I can't wait to get back and chat with you about it. I'll have to bring Cindy down to Cabo and we'll have some more amazing stories.
Look forward to it.
Thanks to everyone for joining the show today. It's been fantastic. Tomorrow, episode 5, before we get to the weekend, and we've got 2 wonderful international entertainers. From France, we've got Camille Mesnard, and from Mexico, we've got Julia Varri, and we've got some amazing stories and some great videos for you to watch there. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on another episode of Tat Talk next time. Thank you.
I'll see you back.